So here to tell, if you're going to sleep there. So here to tell us about how we've basically gone from no internationalization to a little bit to a whole lot, and the story continues to improve in some pretty significant ways, is one of the developers who works on that. Please welcome Kooyman.
Well, I have to start by thanking people. This is the week for it, isn't it? First of all, I want to thank Brady, who snuck out the AV bag and saved my bacon here with the right adapter for my MacBook Pro. But I also want to thank STIC and all the presenters and all the wonderful folks here. It is such an incredible honor to even be here, let alone be presenting on this stage with some of the people that I've been watching all week, that I'm personally overwhelmed. It is a great conference. I've been having a great time. I hope everybody else has it. My background, I don't admit this very much, but I'm among my people, so I can say this, I think. My background is in mainframes originally, and then, like a lot of folks, I worked for computer companies for years, and all of that time, I was avoiding internationalization as best I could. I just didn't want to deal with it. I think that's a pretty common thing. And so one of the things that we're trying to do, and we'll be trying to do even more in the future, is to make this as little of an intrusive thing as it can be. And that's, of course, one of those relatives. And there's not much we can do about that. But if you have to deal with it, we're trying to make it easy if we can. So there I am at home in my element, where I'm happiest with all my books so I can look up the things I'm supposed to know. Like a lot of people I learned early on, it's not what you know, it's do you know where to go find it again when you need it? And that's a very good skill to have, and one that I've been working on. Here comes Suzanne and making funny faces at me. I'm preempting her. Another thing that I want to issue thanks about is I feel incredibly lucky to work at a company that has not one but two amazing small talks. And I for one, was really impressed with what I saw from the new Logic Studio stuff, the new GUI stuff, so I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it, actually. And I worked with it a long time ago when it was Zenfin, after I stopped being a mainframe. So, and we're going to talk about both of those small talks, but we're going to mostly talk about visual today. I work in what's called the base image group, or what in Arden's slide, if you saw his talk, is the foundation wedge there at the bottom, mostly, which means that I'm also concerned with how things go in Logic Studio, and we'll talk about why that is a bit later on. What the heck is internationalization that I was running from all of these years? Well, there's a number of components to it, and you're going to see another one added as we get a little further on. But these are the classic ones that have always been with us. And there's a reference to some new technology there. But basically, internationalization has always meant input and output in language, in a language appropriate character set, which if it's a non-Roman or a non-Latin character set becomes a whole lot more significant. And these days it might be fairly complex. You might have an input method editor to enter Korean or Japanese or Chinese, any of the various flavors of all of those. You might have a need for text with bidirectional attributes, as we were talking about in several of the presentations. And these days, more and more text shaping is coming into it. These things all work hand in glove together, or at least they're supposed to. Also, traditionally, regionally appropriate format customizations, numbers, dates, times, what's the currency amounts, what's the currency symbol, what's the thousands separator, what's the decimal separator. Those have typically been things that we've always been concerned about. And message translations are also a, don't do that. Also, I have to keep the system alive. I should have set the default a little different. Message translations are important because that's how we get our applications so that it can be used in different countries and present messages in the appropriate language and implemented via message catalogs, as most people know. So what we're going to talk about today, I hope we're going to have some fun. I'm not going to get super techie on you all, but With this being the 30th anniversary of Smalltalk, it's a good time to talk about history. So I want to talk about some history that I haven't heard talked about. So we're going to talk in two parts. We're going to talk about what's happened in the industry, and then what's going on in VisualWorks and Object Studio, and in history in the near and immediate past, and what are some trends, and I'll speculate a tiny bit. And why is the history interesting? You can take a look. If you took a look at, if there were a graph of internationalization activity on the part of all of us in the industry, it would be fairly flat until about 1980-ish, and then it would be one of those L curves that goes asymptotic almost. I mean, there's so much going on now, and it's been accelerating since about 1990. Now it's almost, if you don't care about internationalization yet, you will. I guarantee it. If you stay in this business anyway, you will be concerned about presenting to multiple cultures, multiple languages, other customizations, regional differences. So we're going to talk about the industry a little bit, and I call this the long and winding road because it took a long time to get places. And I've got a disclaimer there. What it basically says, don't bother reading it. I'm just trying to tell everybody that I've made a personal selection of the high points of the history that I want to touch on. Doesn't mean there isn't other history or that it isn't compelling or that great things haven't been done by other companies that I'm going to mention. It's just these are the ones I've chosen to highlight so that this thing doesn't go on forever. So let's talk with codes. Let's start with codes, rather. Well, first, obviously, there was Morse and Baudot, the telegraph, and the teletypewriter, teleprinter. And that goes back fairly far. And I heard a great story the other night about how train engineers are often blowing their whistles in Morse code, which is something I didn't know. And I tried to impress Suzanne with that. Naturally, she knew that already. But maybe I'll tell you some of the things that you didn't know. I date a lot of this back to when we were talking about codes. Herman Hollerith, who, yes, everyone knows he invented the punch card, but do you remember why he invented the punch card? Or he didn't invent the punch card, he actually adapted a technology that had been around for quite a while. But he certainly popularized it, and he came up with a specific code that lasted for a long time. In 1880, the census was still processed by hand in the United States. It took 7 years to finish the data from the 1880 census. So the results came out in 1887, but 3 years short of time to do it again. It was nearly useless because people want that information in a timely fashion. And by then, I presume the 1870 census had taken quite a while, and the 1860 census might have been likewise. They could see a trend. They were not going to be able to get the thing out at all pretty soon. So Herman Hollerith was a statistician working for the government, came up with a way to tabulate all this stuff with punch card and tabulating machines. And instead of 7 years, it was a matter of weeks, months, and they were done. And people were pretty impressed and sat up and took notice of that. Long term, Mr. Hollerith bequeathed us a company that was the C in the calculating, tabulating, recording company, which became a little company called IBM. So IBM was there pretty early. Not that there weren't other companies, but IBM is the one I'm going to focus on because it's the one that most affected me, and I think most affected people in the 1980s in the United States. Today there are many, many players. Just to finish off talking about codes, there were ASCII and its variants, all the ISO flavors. What happened was that ASCII got, as we all know, adapted for other locales in other countries, and pretty soon there was not one ASCII, there were lots of ASCIIs, and the ISO standardized them. It's definitely one of those things where God saw what standards, and we had a lot of them. We had a lot of different variants of ASCII, clearly unmanageable. At least that became clear later. STIC, Extended Binary Coded Decimal Interchange Code from IBM, and anyone who was a System 370 system programmer like I was had this great fold-out card, and ASCII was on it, but it was mostly given over to STIC, and the program status worked on the 370 and so forth. So pity the poor mainframe programmer had to deal with both of these things. And if you had to talk to the ASCII world, it was no fun. But you could do it. So here we were. This went on for a long time. And then what happened? Well, a couple of things happened. I mean, we have to talk about the Japanese because they're really the inspiration for a lot of what occurred. we can blame it on kanji. And that's supposedly, I hope there are not any Japanese speakers here, but if they are, that's supposed to say kanji. Also hiragana and katakana. And if you've spent any time studying Japanese, they also use the Latin character set and Roman numerals, and they have a very challenging environment. That's why their computer industry, the Japanese Industrial Standards Commission, started coming up with standards as far back as 1969. And I won't bore you with what these standards are, other than this newer one down at the bottom here. It was specified but almost used by no one. And the one that I've marked as current was current for a long time. My information may be a little dated, but that was the one that was in play for many of these years. IBM came along in 1984 with the National Language System, and Unicode in 1991. So this is what I consider sort of the Big Bang event. It all came about because IBM wanted to allow MVS, their biggest mainframe operating system, to handle kanji using the double byte character set, or as we have all come to love and know it, as DBCS. And digging into the history, I found out that there was something called a double byte technical coordination office. I love that. Within IBM, who was apparently coordinating the activity, and they presented an implementation proposal to management in May of 1984. And management was impressed enough, apparently, by the presentation that they issued a corporate instruction, number 145, so there were apparently a lot of these things, national language support, and it became a fundamental IBM policy. And by that I mean, if you worked with IBM computer gear, you couldn't escape NLS. It was in everything. It was in MVS, it was in DOS-VNC, it was in VM, all mainframe operating systems, it was in PC-DOS, it was in Windows, it was in OS2. It got into everything because it was a fundamental IBM policy, and apparently they meant it when they said that. Of course, it wasn't the only thing, and along came some other things later on that other people touched upon, Unicode most notably, but also ICU, both the version for Java and the version for C in 1991, and the one that has a big impact on what I do all the time, the CLDR in 2003. So let's talk about Unicode first, and I'm going to get down to this bottom statement here and talk about that, but I think most people know this, so I'm just going to blip over it. The important things are that it's intended to allow all characters of all scripts to be represented. It does a reasonable job of that. It's version and release like software, so you've got version 6 of Unicode, version 6 dot whatever, it goes on. Characters are represented by code points. You can conceptually think of the space in many different ways. I like to think of it as a linear stream of code points sort of marching off into the distance, but they organize them in what they call planes, and there are lots of ways that you can conceptually look at it. But it's important, and I don't expect anybody in this group would have a problem with this, and this is more for a general audience, but it's different from the encodings that we use to transmit it and store it. So UTF-8 and UTF-16, that's not Unicode, that's encoding for Unicode, and some people get hung up on the difference, and the specifics get to be a problem. But it doesn't really have anything to do with Unicode as a concept itself. Now earlier there was some statement. The reason that I'm hedging on my statement, and I'm not saying that we use Unicode for everything and all operating system interfaces, is because I checked it with my partner in crime, Steve Dahl, and he said, well, that's how Steve usually starts things. That's mostly true. But there are, and then he started to give me all the esoteric edge cases where we still don't do that. But it's most, and it's the important interface these days. But we don't use it for absolutely everything. If you go in and check, you'll find a couple of places where we don't use Unicode because it's not appropriate. Now, ICU has been a really, really influential player in this space. The international components for Unicode, which were not the original name was IBM Classes for Unicode, was based on work by Taligent in the 1992-1995 type period. Taligent was an interesting company. It was a joint venture, if you don't remember, of Apple and IBM. In the beginning, Motorola was involved as well. The hopes for it were high, but the industry skeptics poo-pooed it from the beginning. And in the end, IBM and Apple didn't keep their marriage and broke apart. And it was originally to build a new object-oriented operating system, and that never shipped. But the work that did come out of it in internationalization became the base for the Java Development Kit 1.1 international APIs. And then IBM released it in 1999 as IBM Classes for Unicode. It includes the CLDR locales, which we'll talk about. And there are two main versions, ICU4J for Java and ICU4C for C and C++. And one of the things that came up is that Gemstone is using that. And a lot of people are using it under the covers. But what I want to talk about for a few moments is the common locale data repository. And one of the things I want to say is what goes around comes around. I see my former boss in the audience, the man who assigned me to work on this stuff, who announced in his presentation that he's working on internationalization, which I take kind of a perverse pleasure in that he's in the same boat I am to some extent. Because you can spend the rest of your life on this stuff, and we can talk about it forever and geek out totally. But if you haven't yet had anything to do with the CLDR, you probably won't directly. Most people are going to use it indirectly. And again, like Unicode, it's got version release-like software. It's a bunch of XML files. It comes from the Unicode consortium, and it has its own dialect in which it's written called locale data markup language. So you not only have to figure it out, you have to figure out the language it's written into. It's not too bad. It's basically XML. And that's become a very important part of our work. So we'll talk about that. And this is where we're starting to call out text composition and display as one of, this is a modern concern. And it used to be historically, all we were really interested in was message catalogs if you were a mainframer with NLS. But we have a lot more concerns these days. Computers do a lot more, they handle a lot more fonts, text, character sets. We have a lot more horsepower to spend on the UI, so we can do these things. We've always been interested in locale-based customizations. We've always been interested in message catalogs. We're getting more interested in text composition and display, and I should say input as well, too. So these are the things we've always been interested in the locale, and these are things that you're used to getting out of the locale, finding out what the time formatting is there, finding out what the date formatting is, that's always a good one. Number formatting, currency formatting. These are some things you can ask our locales in our product. There's lots of good stuff you can get there. Per locale collation, message catalogs for system user messages. But they all hang on the locale. And there is basically the locale naming format. And these are two I pulled off of my machine that I was working on. The one we're on right now is the one that gave us ENUS Windows 1252 and ENUS UTF-8. These things are not in conflict with the fact that we use Unicode to talk to the operating system. It mostly indicates encoding for fonts and things like that. Although it was UTF, you notice, on Linux. So what did we do with locales? We put in locales a long time ago, and I've got a timeline here in a second. But then that, as was mentioned earlier, was not sufficient, so we had to put in a lot more. So the original class was class locale, which pretty much did everything. The current classes, and I'll say why locale is still there in a second. This is where we get a little bit technical. The current classes that have been since VisualWorks 7.7 implementing the locale subsystem are composite locale, which is comprised of a locale localization component and a locale encoding component, which correspond to the encoding is pretty clear. The locale, mostly, and the other thing is besides fonts, file storage and retrieval. That's the default encoding for that, so it's important for that. If you want to read your files back. But the important thing about localization is that it encapsulates the language and the territory, and the encoding encapsulates the other parts of it. We don't write the initialization methods that you see there. We pull them out of the CLDR by parsing the XML and Smalltalk, and then we write the code. So this is a code generation thing. Every time I bring in a new CLDR, I hit the button and go get a cup of coffee. And it eventually spits out all the stuff that we see in the image. So it is generated code, and the formatting, particularly in timestamp print policy for locales that are not using Roman characters, may contain not only non-Roman characters, but in some cases they may include explicit change of direction characters embedded into the format, and a presumption of right to left word ordering depending upon the conventions of the location. So here's what's happened in VisualWorks. I went back as far as I could easily get something to load and run. I probably could have gone back a little farther, but in 5i.4 in 2001, there were 2 locales. They were US and C, and there were a couple of versions of encodings of each of those. And that was it. And most people, I think, ran C locale, particularly if they were not in the United States. In 7.6, which was the current version when I joined the company in 2008, there were 15 locales, which I have named the legacy locales. And they were still country-based, but there were a few more of them than 2. In release 7.7, we were already up to 417 locales. This is the introduction of the CLDR-based locales. In 7.10, which is coming out, there are 587 locales. You see a trend here. Well, not only is this building up in VisualWorks and accreting over time, anybody who's using ICU is having the same experience. This is probably not the way we're going to go forever, because this is not expressing all the locales we care about. If you want some obscure language in the United States, you can put together the language and the territory and have an appropriate name for a locale, but there may be nothing there. Why not? Why can't we mix them together arbitrarily? There are some signs that the CLDR is going to go this way. And we're thinking about it too. There's lots of advantages. Not huge, but you can save on memory, because we have a lot of stuff sitting around already made up, ready to be combined and used. Whenever 8.0 comes out, that's the question mark. Not that it won't, but when it does, which I do not know, the legacy locales will be removed to a loadable parcel. We could really do it at any time. We're choosing to do it at a major release boundary whenever it occurs, because that's when people understand we may break a little compatibility. I hope no one's really dependent on those locales anymore, and they won't go away totally, but they're not going to be in the image just sitting there anymore. You could use either one set or the other set right now, but you can't use them both. But I know a lot of people are still sitting on the old locales. When 8.0 comes, they'll either want to load up the old ones or they will finally move to new ones. The on-demand locale construction has to do with the proliferation of the locales and not doing that, but just making up the constituent parts and putting them together when we need them. And the thing that I'm excited about is these arbitrary language and territory combinations. And they're not arbitrary if it's your language. If you're speaking, this one is in the CLDR, but if you're speaking Portuguese in the United States, you probably want a Portuguese US locale. But if you're speaking a more obscure language and there isn't one on the list for you, you're just sort of left out in the cold. And I don't think we will do that in the future. Message catalogs, I think everyone's familiar with them, but mostly what I want to talk about is that they are searched by a locale, and each process can have its own catalogs based on its own locale. If you want to mess with locales, you want to do it on a process-by-process basis, because the system locale we consider more or less a read-only resource. We don't make it up arbitrarily. We have a primitive that we've had for a while now that asks the operating system, what is the locale, what is the encoding, and then that's what we set up in VisualWorks for you. So it will match what you're, if you change your operating system, the next time you start VisualWorks, that will change. The third thing we care about, text composition and display, varies widely by OS. Bidirectional text and text shaping, more importantly, are not yet common. Cross-platform solutions, even more, are elusive. Right now, the approaches are fairly proprietary in each case. Linux, particularly, which you would think would be pretty standard, unfortunately has, almost by distribution, a lot of differences in how well they handle text shaping. And one of the reasons we care about text shaping is some languages, the characters actually change shape depending upon where they are in the word and what other characters that they're nearby. At least Arabic does that, and I think some others do as well. So, and this is a good point to bring up the issue that this is not all about me. I'm not talking about things that I have done. I'm trying to give a presentation about what has happened in Cincom VisualWorks. And that means that they're done by a number of people on the team. And Text 2 is an exploration of these issues, something practical, but also something experimental to see what we can do. You've probably seen the video on that, and I'm not going to replay it, but I'm going to do a quick demo at the end that I think might be interesting. But it's doing some things with BIDI, and so it supports bidirectional, as you saw, and that's the way of the future. We have other support for, this is the point, we have other support for I18N, which is the contraction for internationalization. We have a package that's been around for a long time called I18M, which basically helps you make the message catalogs. We still use it in our build process all the time. Georg and the other folks from HEAP have talked about the Internationalizer and the Localizer, which we're going to see demonstrated here shortly, which I think is a really interesting demonstration of how you can really handle a large project that requires a lot of translation and going through your image and finding out where all the places are that you care about. Per process locales, which I mentioned, locale-specific message catalogs, which go hand in hand with per process locales. Another thing that came along with this year from HEAP is optional byte order mark support, which you may care about if you have internationalization tools that use that. And I'll talk about that in a bit. And another thing that almost made it into 710 and probably will be in the next release, whatever that is ISO 8601, which is the ambiguous timestamp, unambiguous timestamp formatting and reading. And the only reason I bring that up is that it's not really internationalization, but it's kind of related. If you're busy, and maybe you've got the classic example is a web server with people coming from different locales, and so maybe you're internationalizing text for a lot of different folks out there. You also may need, while you're displaying that to people locally, you may need an unambiguous way to communicate with other systems. And so this requires that you know what time offset you are from UTC. And so that's coming. We've had it up and working. It wasn't quite the way we wanted it, so we'll do it until it's right. And you'll get it when it's right, and which will hopefully not be very much longer at all. So I'd like to do my live demo of text 2 if I can. And I'm gonna break the fourth wall here, as they say in the TV shows. I didn't get quite as organized as the guys who he did, and yes, I know, I turned you off on purpose, so you did. Oh, this is going to be fun. I'm in a different resolution than I'm used to. So, I took the liberty of going ahead and grabbing some timestamps in Arabic earlier. I used the Arabic Kuwait locale, and I've got text 2 loaded on here. What I had been doing, well, I won't tell you yet. First, let me just real quickly bring this up. You've seen this before. I just want to grab one of the examples that was in the video, and just again, you can actually see that fairly well. I'm surprised. Just to show you the behavior of the selection as you go across. This is going the other way, and it's a little tricky, but you can get the whole thing there, and then you can copy it and do whatever. But what I like to do here is empty that and set to a font. I was working with some really big ones last night, but I don't think I need to. I'll try this 24 here. This resolution's a little different. So let's grab one of these guys here. And I did one at 7 in the morning and 10 in the morning, whatever. It doesn't matter. Grab this one. And the way I got this was I basically did a timestamp now, and then I printed it through the locale supported printing mechanism, and now I'm going to paste it in here. Now what I want you to notice is that text 2 has done the right thing. What this says, these are all in a very formulaic way, so even though I do not read Arabic, I know what it says. What this basically says is June 12th, and then this is, this would be the date of the week, excuse me. This would be Wednesday, the 12th of June, comma. And then in Arabic, of course, the numbers read the other way. You have to use a lot of your brain to read Arabic because you read from right to left, and then you read from left to right for the numbers again. And then this is the AM, PM. So we're getting close to being able to do this stuff right. And I'm getting excited. Input's another part of the game, but the pieces are starting to come together. So that's my quick demo on that. You've seen the other more flashy ones. I just wanted to show you that the stuff is actually working. You can actually do things with it, and we'll do more with it real soon. So let me go back to here. And gosh, how do I do this? How do I go back to the presentation without starting at the beginning? Anybody know? I'm not a PowerPoint geek, obviously.
On the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
The smallest one.
I've actually done that before, but you can tell I'm not a marketing person. I don't do this very often. There's a funny story about that I'll tell you offline if you want to know. But I do have a very interesting, now, if you're actually working with this, and I have enough time, thank goodness. If you're actually working with this, I think this is really exciting. And Georg tells us much better than I do, but let me paraphrase the situation. Georg and his wife are working with a bunch of students to internationalize a whole lot of stuff for not just Smalltalk, but other products as well, which is why they care about the byte order mark. This stuff is in a sort of an assembly line process. When the work comes out and it goes into some Microsoft tools, it needs to have byte order marks to explicitly say what's going on with the file, which encoding it is, what the endianness of the file is. Those tools depend upon those. That's why you might want to load that. And they have some really exciting stuff here, and I'm going to just let it talk for itself here. This does not run for very long, and I'm going to be quiet because Karsten speaks kind of quietly, but I think I've got the volume up so that you can hear what he's saying. So, without further ado, here we go.
Hello, my name is Karsten, and I want to show you how the localizer and the internationalizer work. For that, I created a demo application called Universal Converter, and it can convert numbers from one unit to another. Like here you see from €1 to US dollar. And it can also convert length, for example, from mile to foot. And it is implemented using pragmas to define the converter and the units that the converter can convert. And the user interface has some strings that need to be localized and some that don't, like the units. And to localize that, you first need to internationalize it, which can be done using the internationalizer. So we build it. And it adds to the tools menu two items, the browse message catalogs and browse missing internationalization strings. And what we need to do is we need to browse these strings. So we enter package where we want to search in, and now we see all the strings that need to be internationalized. The first one is the line that you see in the receipt. And to internationalize this string, it's better to first convert it into a macro, which you can now do using the refactoring browser's context menu to convert it to a macro. And then you can convert this string into a user message. Here you need to enter the catalog name. And then it is converted. And it's also removed from the list here. The next string is the minus. The minus is the symbol that is used to describe a unit that doesn't have the unit pragma. Like here you can see the euro unit. And this is a string that should not be localized, so we can mark it as don't internationalize the string. And you can see there is an as is added as a message sent to this string to identify this kind of strings. Now if we go to the other units, these are part of a pragma, so here it is hard to tell the internationalizer that this string should not be internationalized, because you cannot send messages inside a pragma. But what you can do is you can tell the internationalizer that the unit pragma itself should never be internationalized. And that can be done using a method that you add next to the methods that use these pragmas. So here we add a method called ignore unit pragma, and we add a pragma to it called IAT and pragmas to ignore. And here we return a list of the pragmas that the internationalizer should ignore, which is in this case only unit. And when we reopen the tool, we'll now have picked up this pragma and we'll know that it should ignore these strings. And the next string is amount, which is part of the Windows spec. And in here we can also convert it into a user message, and it will now be converted into an array like this, but encoding the user message. And the internationalizer will know what or how to encode the user message for the current context. So in the next example, currency, it will need to convert it into yet another kind of user message. In this case, the user messages are encoded as simple literal arrays that have a key, the catalog, and the default string. So now all strings are converted into user messages, and what you can do now is verify that the catalog is correct and that all keys are proper and that there are no errors. And you can also export these this catalog to an LBL file. To do that, you go to the Tools menu and select Browse Message Catalogs. And when you click on the Reload button, it will try to find all the methods that use user messages. So now you see a list of all the catalogs in your system, and the universal converter is down here. It has 0 problems and 20 defined keys, and if you double click it, you can see all the user messages that are defined in this catalog. Now, if we add a method that has problems, then you will see here that this catalog has problems because the internationalizer will pick up quite some problems. For example, you cannot use keys with a column. Or you cannot use this selector twice. This will produce an interesting user message, but not the one that you want. Or you can forget the catalog. There are some other problems that can occur, like the key is too long, or you use the same key for 2 user messages, which you can also do for 2 different default strings. And now you see that there are 4 problems. There is an invalid code, like here you see that it's using the selector twice. And you could correct it here and say, use this selector. And now the invalid code will not have these user messages listed. You'll see there is an illegal key here. So I remove the column, and this is fixed too. And there are key collisions here when you have string and string 1. So you can select key 1. And now the key collision is gone, the legal key is gone, invalid code is gone, and all keys are proper. So this is this tool, and let's just remove this method here. What you can do here is also write comments. In order to localize this application, you need to load the localizer, which is called L10N. And when you launch it, it will also go through the system, find all the user messages. And the localizer allows you to translate the strings of catalog into different languages that you want to translate to. And it gives you a user interface with context for the current translation. So it shows you the method where it is used, or if it's a Windows spec, it will show you the application model, how it looks like, or in the menu, it will show you the menu. It will also provide translations that could match your current word, so it has a translate memory. And once you enter the language that you want to translate to, you will see catalogs that you can translate. Let's just use our translator. Let's say we want to convert, we want to translate meter. Meter is actually the same word in German. you go to kilometer, it should pick up meter as translation, but it matches not close enough, so let's just reduce it to 40%, and there you see that meter matches 44%. So we could use this as a starting point and say, let's translate it to this. And let's translate some user interface strings like amount. And as you can see, it automatically picks up the translation. So you can use your user interface. If you open it again, it will already use your translations, which is quite neat. So once you translated all words, you can export the strings to message files using export catalogs. And we just want to export this one catalog. We export the Cincom and DED languages. Let's click on export. And when we go to the file browser, we see that there is a DED message file containing our translations and a Cincom message file containing all translations. And that's it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, I think that's a pretty nifty tool. Neither Carsten nor I are professional presenters, but I think it was cool stuff. What I want to say about Object Studio has already been said, really, but let me reiterate. Since 2007 and Object Studio 8, it's been built on the same foundation that VisualWorks is on, which means that since then they've been using our locales, and they're going forward with that as well, doing their own things, but we're sharing the common stuff that we don't want to write twice. Now, hopefully these will all be available, so I don't want anybody trying copying this stuff down. But there's some interesting stuff that I used as source material you want to follow, and I'm sure this will be on the website later. So I don't have a huge amount of time, but if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them, or at least take a stab at them.